I believe Tony and Tom are ready. Okay.
Indeed we are.
How are things in Pasadena?
Things are pretty good, actually. Mark, you might be surprised to find out. So,
The theme of the Rose Parade this morning was best day ever, and I think there were a lot of people wearing red in the stadium who would probably agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. Mark, thank you, and Devin for handling the first 90-odd minutes of this one, and we will take the next, 90-odd minutes of whatever. So thanks, and welcome everybody to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom. How's it going?
Well,
yeah.
At one point, Ohio State had 41 points and Oregon had negative 16 yards rushing, and I thought, I did not see this coming. We usually have a decent sense for what's going to happen, and we talked about the fact that the Oregon defense was definitely the weak link on the field, but it was like, well, Ohio State might score 34 points in the game, and they might win the game 34 to. I think you picked 34 to 24, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. I picked like 28-24. Like, yeah, sure. They had 34 points at halftime. They were on pace at one point for more than 70 points and something like 800 yards of total offense.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what you do to Florida A&M. That's not what you do to the nominally number one team in the country.
Yeah, well, let's start out with a super chat here from Mike Farino. How's it going, guys? I owe Ryan Day huge apology. I'm fully back on board now. Don't know how you couldn't be after that. It's been a pretty good couple of pretty good 10 days for Ryan Day or so. Mm-hmm. This one, you have to give the team credit, give him credit for getting this team back together, because there were some uncomfortable conversations after that Michigan game, and it wasn't just immediately after the Michigan game. It was days after as well, where there were a lot of communications and a lot of things said. Talking to Emeka Egbuka in the locker room, he was asked, what did you say as a leader? He's like, well, I'm going to keep that in the locker room, the things I say in the locker room after that Michigan game, about the Michigan game. But yeah, this was one that I think should get some people back on board. But there will always be the contingent that is like, well, I still need to see more. And then even if they were to win 2 more, it's like, yeah, but I still would have liked to have that Michigan game.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't make everybody happy.
Yeah.
You can make the majority of people happy. Then that's pretty good. That's where they are right now. Because how can you not be happy after this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time since the 2014 Big Ten championship game that I thought, hey, this game reminds me of the 2014 Big Ten championship game, just in terms of you came in with expectations of like, I don't know, either team could win, probably going to be close, and then it was just murder from top to bottom. And you have not seen that since that game. But, it was just in terms of the offense, just everything looking like they were playing on JV level. And then the defense looking like they were playing everything on JV level, and just mashing Oregon into the ground on the offensive line and the defensive line. Just Oregon didn't win anything in the trenches. Like if they got one sack on Will Howard, something like that, but Ohio State's pass rush was dominant, and they were. I don't know if you could tell on TV or from up in the press box, there was hitting going on that field. I went back to. Remember the Clemson Fiesta Bowl, where after the game, it was like everyone thought, oh, boy, they needed about 3 weeks to rest up from this one. Oregon wasn't really hitting like that. In that Clemson Fiesta Bowl, I mean, Oregon had some hits, but it was like consistently Ohio State, like Sonny Styles. I thought Sonny Styles might kill someone.
Lathan Ransom hit Jordan James. He may have sent Jordan James out of the game on a hit early on. I was talking to Ty Hamilton in the locker room about this game, and he said – you could tell pretty early on that Oregon didn't want to play anymore. And this is like first or second quarter, where it's like they knew they were in trouble. Ohio State just kept coming after them. One of the things that Caden Curry said in the locker room was that this time around, Ohio State played their game instead of playing Oregon's game last time.
Yeah.
And that was pretty clear. And then I was asking all the players, what is your game? And they're pretty much like, you saw it.
You seen it.
And then I got to talk with Larry Johnson. We'll get through all of this, but talk to Larry Johnson about getting after it. He was a pretty happy camper too.
All right, Mike Ferguson, Super Chat. We got to get to this one right away. FYI, the NCAA bylaws clearly state that any slander towards Buckyes is a Class 1 felony and thus will not be tolerated regardless of this week's opponent.
Hey,
I mean,
you're not going to hear anything bad about Bucky's from us.
I don't remember if is there a Bucky's in Dallas. I know we hit a Bucky's on the way back or down to Atlanta the last time, so that might be a one more game. You know, there is in Dallas. Okay. So
Bucky's correspondent Kevin Noon lets us know.
Bucky's regional Buckeyes correspondent has logged on. So yes, so we will perhaps be Bucky's adjacent in a matter of a week or whatever it is.
You know, we also like to go to Fuel City.
Fuel City tacos. Yes, we gotta stay. There's so much stuff we gotta talk about that is not tacos.
But we're going to be all over the place. Normally, we like to let's go talk offense, let's talk defense.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people will be throwing super chats in, and we'll just get so distracted.
I did want to say hi to Doreen real quick. Kevin punched up her comment. I was just thinking about Doreen yesterday because she has a daughter who's in the OSU marching band, and I went over and did a story on the OSU marching band practicing and getting ready for the Tournament of Roses parade, and then was out at the parade this morning. So if I fall asleep about 45 minutes from now, that's why. But yes, I think this is the most band content we've had for a while.
Yeah,
but it's gotten people like it, so we'll probably try and do more band.
If you're
content.
a band person, Tom has thrown out a ton of videos now, and I feel this is. I was hoping not to see this. Go ahead.
It's a new year, Tony.
I know,
and that means it is time for Jordan Kapler to just take one step to the left. He says, best thing about following Buckeye Huddle is you get the two smartest, most handsome guys in the business covering Ohio State. Then there's Kevin. I mean, no lies detected, as the kids say.
I hope this is a quick year. I'm glad it's not a leap year like the last year. But thank you for that super chat. Kevin thanks you as well. No? Okay, a little. Yeah. Odysseus 2002. Well,
we'll get back to that. Let's save the non-football stuff for later. We may get to that 3 hours from now. Who knows? Todd says offense and defense played great. I'm proud of Jaden Fielding. Hopefully the aggressive play calling continues. Safe travels home. Yeah, you had to feel good for Jaden Fielding because he had the two misses against Michigan. Got put in a terrible position against Tennessee that you didn't expect him to make it. But, I think we got so many questions this week about, will the better weather help? Yeah. And it feels like the answer, those got answered pretty clearly because, you had a better view of these than I did, but it didn't look like it was like he was just barely eking them in. It looked like most of them were kind of just right down the pipe.
Well, that 46-yarder was good by a mile, and
his season long, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Also, his kickoffs were going through the end zone at times.
Yeah.
So he was showing off some leg, if you will. And I also thought being up 14-0 and then having that kind of freedom and security to attempt, and if you miss it, no big. This is an opportunity to see where his head's at, where his leg's at, and then it led to another one. I predicted 2 field goals in this game. You said I was crazy.
Did you really?
Well, they had 34-24, so how else are you going to get there?
Oh, I thought you were talking about the bold prediction show.
No.
Ryan says, defense good, offense good, kicker made field goals, everyone happy. Seriously, though, Happy New Year's, everyone. Take care of one another. Yeah,
absolutely.
I was trying to think. My years of covering Ohio State always have me thinking, okay, what are people going to be upset about? Because there's always something to be upset about. And I thought, the drive right before halftime, and then, they came out and they scored again.
They lost the middle eight.
They lost the middle eight, which, okay. But even it was like when they tried to run the ball and you're getting away from running, throwing the ball, and why are you doing that? And then Travion Henderson goes 60 whatever yards for a touchdown. This was a game where I talk all the time about percentile outcomes, and 50th percentile outcome is about what you would expect a game to, if everything just kind of goes normally for both teams, that's kind of the 50th percentile outcome. This is what the 99th percentile outcome looks like. That's what that first half was for Ohio State. Everything went right for Ohio State. Everything went wrong for Oregon. And, everything going wrong for Oregon had a lot to do with everything going right for Ohio State. Ohio State made a lot of things go wrong for Oregon. That was as complete a half of football as you've seen against a team, that's a top 10 caliber team. And this is obviously a little better than a top 10 caliber team. But since that 2014 Big Ten championship game, and that was such an outlier game that you were like, well, you're never going to see this again. And it took 10 years. And then, 10 years to the day since the last time they beat a number one team in the college football playoff. They beat a number one team in the college football playoff. That was January 1st, 2015.
390 yards of total offense in the first half. to about 139 for Oregon. So this was complete domination all over the place. Super chat from Dave K.
Okay, let's hit the stat. Okay, let's hit the super chat real quick, and then we'll get to the game stats. Or not. Okay, here we go. Dave K says most of the season the pass rush was close but no cigar. Why are they getting home now? They dominated.
Well,
I mean, we talked about this yesterday, where I had a stat that I retweeted yesterday, and you can probably find it back in my Twitter feed. But it was how many times Ohio State had rushed with 5 or more guys in the first 6 games versus the 7 games more recently than that. And it was basically like 3 times as many times that rushed with 5 or more guys. And in terms of getting home for sacks, it was like 5 times or 6 times as many times. And at some point, you don't even need to you don't need to bring 6 guys to get there. You just need to be unpredictable, because it felt like you probably have a better idea for what the blocking looked like in the line of scrimmage stuff than I do, but it felt like there were times that someone was coming free and someone on Oregon's offensive line was standing there blocking air.
Yeah, well, and they were effective with some of their blitzes, but JT and Jack Sawyer were also very effective just beating their one-on-one blocks. And you could see that Jack Sawyer two sacks and a couple tackles for loss, and Cody Simon gets Dylan Gabriel down as well. We talked about before the game, disrupting him is great, but when you have an opportunity to tackle him, you have to do it. And they did this over and over again all night long. And that would, to me, not just to me, to everybody, that's one of the keys of this game, because if you just sit back and let Dylan Gabriel find something, he will find something. And he still was able to do that at times.
Dylan Gabriel, long rush of 5 yards, right there. Yeah. That, to me, that's a winning stat. If all you tell me is long rush of 5 yards for Dylan Gabriel, that's probably a winning stat for Ohio State. 12 carries, negative 43 yards. And that's how often Ohio State got there. Jordan James, 7 carries, 11 yards. 14 yards. 14 yards with a long of 11. So he had 6 carries for 3 yards and then 1 of 11. Averaged 2. Yeah. Noah Whittington, 6 carries, 3 yards. Averaged 18 inches per carry. I mean, that is 28 carries, negative 23 yards.
How about 6 catches for Tez Johnson for 6 touches for 31 yards for Tez Johnson on offense?
Yeah.
They stopped him, dominated everybody. I guess Evan Stewart got hurt in pregame warmups. So
did he?
That's why he wasn't out there.
Okay.
Jordan James, I believe, went out at some point, and he was hurt for a while. He may have missed most of the game with a head injury of something. So
Trayshawn Holden picked up where Evan Stewart left off. Trayshawn Holden missed most of the first game after spitting on Davis and Egbuka, and he had 7 for 116, a couple touchdowns. I mean, but
that's all.
The touchdowns were kind of like, oh, all right, they were against the ones, but I was talking to someone on the field after half. Oregon has scored a touchdown right before halftime, and they go for 2 and they get it. And then they go down the field again and score in the third quarter. And it's like they're still in trouble, because even though they've scored on the last 2 drives, this last drive, the first drive of the second half, took 6 minutes off the clock, and they burned a timeout. And it's like, and they still need 3 more, even if they stop Ohio State every time, which there's no indication they're going to stop Ohio State every time. The Oregon was basically running out of time the entire second half, because Ohio State, they hit all those big plays in the first game. They hit nothing in the second game.
No, and in the first game, Ohio State had 2 completions of 30 yards in the entire game against Oregon. They had 2 completions of 30 yards in their first 3 pass attempts in the first drive in this game. Will Howard, after his first 14 passes attempted, had 255 yards passing. After Dylan Gabriel's first 12, he had 47 yards. This is at roughly the same point in the game. Yeah. And you could just see, like, Ohio State's tackling was on point. Oregon running on first down as often as they did, picking up a loss of 1 just about every time. And then there was one time where they got they picked up a yard on first down run. It's like, well, that's a season-long rush or a game-long rush on first down. It's better than the usual.
Well, I have so many pictures because I shoot behind the Oregon offense, so I always have the Ohio State defense coming towards me. I have so many pictures of the back of an Oregon running back and Cody Simon and Caleb Downs or Lathan Ransom and Jack Sawyer or JT. It's just like, here's 3 guys. you're probably not going to beat all three of them. And then, the next picture is everyone's horizontal.
Yep. No, it's tremendous one-on-one tackling and then tremendous team tackling. Super chat from Mike Ferguson. Still no holding calls that favor OSU. The tradition continues. Apparently, there looked to be some holds on the Oregon offensive line.
There were Jack Sawyer got a lot of attention. I will tell you, I went up into the stands to what ended up being the Oregon section during the end of the third quarter. I was fighting a flow of Oregon fans coming down to the stands with about 4 minutes left in the third quarter, which, again, didn't anticipate that. But I was up there and just sort of amidst Oregon fans and just sort of standing there and just shooting some pictures and waiting for the color to change a little bit and shooting some more pictures. And there's a lot of crabbing from Oregon fans about, well, Ohio State was getting away with a lot of holding. It's like, well, yeah, I mean,
Thank you.
There was not a lot of holding calls really either direction. I don't know how many penalties there were in the game. It was just a game where that was kind of like a let them play game. And yeah, I mean, there were plenty of times Jack Sawyer's coming around the end. Jack Sawyer's taking a stunt. Yeah, two penalties for 14 yards, 3 penalties for 13 yards. And at that point, I mean, they're letting them play. That's fine. If you want to let them play, that's fine. If you want to not let them play, that's fine to a point. Like we watched some Tennessee games this year where it was like, all right, we don't need 270 yards of penalties. Like I would rather see 2 for 14 and 3 for 13. And you just have to accept, look, if your offensive line's not getting called for holding, then you can't complain that their offensive line's not getting called for holding.
So I did ask Larry Johnson about it after the game in terms of, hey, like you guys never get called for holding. He's like, it's crazy, isn't it? How is this possible? So yes, turns out he is well aware that they don't get held at all, or they don't get called for it. So kudos to Denzel Burke and Davison Igbinosun for their redemptions. Offensive line did great as well. Will the low snaps catch up to OSU? There were a lot of low snaps in this one. That'll be something that they focus on. They'll fix that. But yeah, that was a concern because it disrupted the timing of some of the plays. Now, if all of those snaps are on point, maybe Ohio State has 600 yards of offense instead of 500. Yeah. But if we're looking at nitpick, and really, that's not a nitpick. That's something that does need to be addressed, and they will address it. Yeah. But maybe tomorrow, not today. But I mean, it was noticeable, and they'll fix that. But Denzel Burke, there was one where Dylan Gabriel went deep on him, and Denzel Burke was running the route. He was the guy that broke open.
I know exactly the
and
play
it was overthrown. And Davison Igbinosun was really, really good. Those guys.
Davison Igbinosun was the subject of my favorite photo of the game, and we don't have the photos loaded, so you're gonna get to see this later. But Davison Igbinosun is running away, like covering like the far corner of the field, and the receiver's a little bit behind him. He's kind of just going up. He's not making contact. He didn't get flagged. Hit him right on the helmet. I have the ball sitting on top of his helmet. But we talked about that this week. He was someone that Oregon thought he's going to get got, and he did not get got at all. Did he give up one completion? Maybe
you're gonna
give up. Yeah, but you give up one completion. Yeah, that was not what the first game was for these guys. Denzel Burke deserves a ton of credit. I mean, this was a little bit of a redemption game for a lot of guys. Denzel Burke on defense, Will Howard, who Will Howard played a great game in the first game, but had the last play, and he talked about how much he thinks about that now. And for him to have the game that he had there, that's a little bit of a redemption thing. And I did see earlier when he was talking with the offensive line, we need to talk about Donovan Jackson. Because man, oh man, like I always say, Ty Hamilton is the most underrated player on this team. I think Donovan Jackson might be the most underrated, underappreciated. And it's not like people don't know he's a great player, but it's like I don't think people really have a grasp of what he's done, where he is in his career to make that move, and to be willing to do it in the middle of the season, and just how screwed they would be if he hadn't done that.
Yeah. Well, I said it before, he's a better left tackle than left guard based on what we're seeing. And not that he wasn't a good left guard. He's just been really, really good at left tackle. You don't see him. You don't hear about him. This Josh Fryer they got after a little bit in this one. But Donovan Jackson, no issues there. And he continues to play really, really well. And unselfish and team guy, team leader, that everything you would want from a fourth-year guy that chose to come back to solidify and accomplish some things. And it's like, things didn't go exactly as you wanted. And yet he's still overcome all of that, and he's playing his best football as a Buckeye right now.
Yeah, and I just saw It's Just Me, Tim on there. Okay, well, hang on. We'll get back to It's Just Me, Tim. Remind me, we're going to go to the Will Howard sound in a minute because Tim asked for it.
Ask for something.
We are all about audience service here, but we're even more about super chats here. And Treebuck says, just for fun, I timed the last 40 yards of Trey's 66-yard run. Definitely a flying start by 3.85. That was such a funny play because I'm sitting in that corner of the end zone. That came right to me. And he kind of goes around the edge, and I'm looking through the lens, so it's kind of, I just see him, and I'm just kind of like waiting for someone in green to show up, and just no one in green shows up, and he just keeps running, and I was like, where is everybody?
Well, and I actually missed the start of that one because I was doing something else at that point. Like, I don't know what I was doing, tweeting something out, and it's like you could not turn away for one moment from this game because something was going to happen, and that was one of those things. And I looked up, and I had to find him. He's like already hitting the corner, and it's like, this is insane.
I will say I'm getting prompted in our chat to tell everyone that our producer predicted that Travion Henderson would have a big run one play before it happened. That is factual.
All right.
That is okay. It was. I didn't see it, and then I just got a text that was like all caps, "Told you so," and I'm like, "What? Tell me what? What are you talking about?" But yes, it was just. He had the weirdest stat line. This is a game where you just look at all these stat lines, and it's like, how this doesn't make any sense. The fourth quarter of the game, Ohio State's up 41-15 or whatever it is, and Travion Henderson has 4 carries. Like, what? What?
He had 2 for 70 for a while.
Yeah.
And finished with 8 for 94. Pretty good 11.8 yard per carry average. At one point in this game, well into the game, Ohio State was averaging 14.9 yards per play, like 14.7.
Is that good?
And it's pretty good. And then Oregon was averaging 2.9, so not as good. So.
Well, and we're talking about Travion here, and I promise are going to get to the Will Howard sound. But while we're talking about the running backs, Quinshon Judkins, 17 carries, 85 yards, no touchdowns, long of 18, not 66. Travion Henderson had 2 touchdowns. Quinshon Judkins, that was a big-time game for him. 5 yards a carry against that defense without having, we talk about it all the time, without having the number skewed by one long run. 5 yards a carry for again, you tell us on Monday this week, hey, Quinshon Judkins get run 17 times, average 5 yards a carry, and his long is going to be 18. You're going to go, that's a pretty good game for Ohio State.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get to the Will Howard interview. I get a chance to talk to him. He was doing an interview on the field with Big Ten Network, and then he was kind of walking. He finished with them, he and Emeka Egbuka, so we'll get to Emeka later. Tim May and I were out there, and it was like, well, all right, you get one of them, I'll grab the other one. And so just talked to Will Howard as we were walking off the field just to get his thoughts on the game. So here's Will Howard.
Yeah, how satisfying was that game against that team after how the first one ended?
Very, very. I was licking my chops for another chance at those guys. I was just so happy to go out there and right the wrongs from that first game because that one hurt.
You guys felt like you were pretty confident this week when we talked to you, but were you confident like it might be 34-0 at halftime, or was that a little bit of a surprise?
I was really confident. I'm not going to lie. I loved our game plan, and I knew our defense was going to go out there and stop them. And, I knew if they did what they had to do, offense was going to do what we had to do. And we played great complementary football and, just did what we had to do, man.
How impressive was that offensive line performance? I mean, to go through so many different iterations of offensive line this year, and they just keep giving you time and opening up lanes on the ground.
They did a hell of a job, man. I'm so proud of those guys stepping up to the challenge. And after all the flack that they got after that Team Up North game, man, I'm so proud of them. I'm so proud of them.
And then got to ask you about Jeremiah.
It's a stud, man. He's different. He's I think, man, when it's all said and done, he could be one of the greatest, to ever do this thing.
All right, thanks, Will.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. All right. So that was Will Howard. You heard me at the end asking about the offensive line. It's just so impressive what that offensive line has done. And yeah, Lee, you can nitpick the snaps and you can, but these are 2 good defensive lines that they've played in a row, and they got another challenge coming next. I don't know, what is it, the 10th?
The 10th.
The
yes.
10th. Okay. The 10th down in Texas.
against.
Congratulations. You just blew the number 1 team into low Earth orbit. Congratulations. Now you get to go play Texas in Texas.
Yeah.
What a fun reward that is.
Did you see how Arizona State kind of got
I have been told that Arizona State got hosed on a targeting call by like 4 completely unrelated people. So I assume it's probably true, but I have not seen it.
even the guy I always go to for targeting, Marcus Hartman, said it was targeting. So.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so let's. I know we have a bunch of graphics that we can get to.
Yeah.
Let's throw up some of that because we have a million different directions we can go with this stuff. So
We will.
Well,
I guess we'll talk about the running game then, because you mentioned Quinshon Judkins and not having a big run. They were able to stay on schedule the entire time.
Yep.
And you see it there. Travion Henderson, 8 carries, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns, a couple of 3 catches that were important in this game.
Yeah.
And then Quinshon Judkins, 17 for 85. I would not have pegged them for running for what they did in this one. This is a winning number clearly.
Yeah.
Like this should have been knowing this, if we had known this, then we could say a 41-21 kind of prediction.
Yeah.
But this now I think is what the offense is. And now this is 2 games in a row.
Yeah.
And you've got the long one, but that's not all you had in there. And so the potential for those long ones can take you from like 150 to 200 and really get you over the top. But only 31 carries in this game, and there was a sack in there. Will Howard ran it a couple of times, but getting those 2 guys going at the right time this year, and it makes everything better. And the offensive line, the rotation continues to work at guard. You saw that Luke Montgomery coming in again at left guard, moving Austin Searveld to right guard. So things are going well. I saw Justin Fry after the game, very, very happy with wanted people to take pictures of him and Donovan Jackson out there. So they were quite pleased.
I got a picture of him and Mike Soleni, who's the GA, who actually just took a job at UNLV as their new offensive line coach. He will have to tell them, sorry, I'm not going to be in this week. I have another football game to coach at Ohio State. But that was like there were some real bear hugs there. That was a win that meant a lot to this team.
Yeah.
And to win the way they did, I mean, you're talking about the rushing. 5.8 yards per carry for Ohio State, negative 0.8 for Oregon. If you told me Ohio State outrushed Oregon by 6.4 yards per carry, I would ask which of Oregon's team buses got lost on the way to the stadium. That's you couldn't have gotten me to believe that in a million years.
Outrushed them by 6.4 yards per carry, and also will only average 5.8 yards per carry. So I asked Ty Hamilton about that, and it's like, they do take quite a bit of pride in that. JT Tuimoloau said that that's a number that they're going to celebrate, and that's quite the accomplishment. As you look at the first quarter comparison where the domination really began, and there was when you start off with that first touchdown drive, and then there's this sense of that was really, really easy. 1 minute, 3 plays, 75 yards, and Jeremiah Smith. We'll eventually get to Jeremiah Smith.
Who?
He's a freshman wide receiver. He's got some records. Set the freshman receiving record in terms of yards in a game. Chris Carter held that one, and now, of course,
Chris Carter also had a pretty good Rose Bowl as a freshman.
Right. So Jeremiah Smith, 7 for 187. Yeah. We'll get to that, but there's the drive chart.
Yeah, the drive chart for Ohio State. Yeah, 3 plays, 75 yards. That was another one where the Travion Henderson one I talked about earlier. I'm looking at him running. I'm like, where's everyone? It was the same thing for the Jeremiah Smith. The first Jeremiah Smith touchdown was just kind of like, it looked like just a nothing little little crossing route, and you'll pick up 6 yards and maybe the first down. And then he just kind of kept running. And it was like, where is everybody?
Yeah, we're watching replay, and Kevin's like, yeah, he cooked him. he cooked that defensive back trying to tackle him. And just another impressive thing. But you look at it, even their bad drive, still 6 for 42.
That was one where they ended up punting at the plus 38 or something like that. And I was expecting where they were, plus 38, that's a 55-yard field goal. So I thought, okay, it's 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, whatever it was. I bet they go for 4 yards or something like that here, 5 yards, just to try and get it to fourth and manageable, and then you have a play you can make. And then I think it was an incomplete pass or something like that. So I think they were probably trying to, because it was, I think, Travion Henderson over the middle. So they were like trying to set that up. And then it didn't work out.
I wouldn't have had a problem with them going for it.
Yeah.
But, it's just unfortunate for Ohio State there that the punt went into the end zone. But, it all worked out pretty well for them.
Yeah, they had 2 touchbacks on punts, and both of them they had a guy down there, and it was just, it just didn't quite get the play.
Lorenzo Styles kind of deked him a little bit.
Yeah.
And he wasn't able to get there.
But and then 3 plays, 53 yards. So you get the touchdown, the scoring drives in the first, the first 4 drives. 3 plays, 75 yards. That is big play, explosive. 3 plays, 53 yards. That is big play, explosive. 10 plays, 63 yards. That is, I'm going to punch you in the face repeatedly. And that was, and then you keep going. 2 plays, 48 yards, touchdown. 1 play, 66 yards, touchdown. 10 plays, 43 yards, field goal. I mean, that's the second quarter. They still are just scoring.
So the first game was won partly because of Oregon's field position. They won the field position battle. They won the special teams battle. In that game, Ohio State's starting field position was their own 22 on average.
Yeah.
Oregon's was their own 36.
Yeah. And then the 48, 2 plays, 48 yards, that's where Dan Lanning went for it, that reminded me, Dan Lanning is a much more aggressive coach than Jim Tressel was. But do you remember in the 2006 season, 2007 BCS National Championship game against Florida, where it was 4th and 1, like deep in Ohio State's territory, and Jim Tressel goes for it. And it's like, statistically, this is the correct play. And I think Beanie Wells might have gotten stopped on it. He did. Okay. But it was like, statistically, this is correct play, but you never statistically make the correct play. And this was a little bit out of probably Dan Lanning's comfort zone, but it was like he sees what everyone else sees, which is the defense is not getting off the field unless Jaden Fielding is kicking a PAT. So you gotta figure something out. And then they didn't get it, and it was like, oh boy, now what? And even another layer on that was like 4th and 3, and I'm like, they're using one of their good 2-point plays here because they know, like, you gotta just burn it all right now, because if you wait another 10 minutes of game time, you might not have a game that you can win.
Yeah, and real quickly, the average starting field position this game for Ohio State was 9 yards better than the last game, 10 yards worse for Oregon.
Yeah.
To give you an idea. But yeah, Lanning, everybody loves him, and the mistakes just kind of get glossed over. I do wonder. We talked about it yesterday or the day before. Will there be any criticism for him coming from this one? Or this one is this such a blowout where it's just like, nobody would have done anything against this team.
Well, you have a talented roster. I mean, this is a talented roster. They have, you have your Phil Knight money. You have all your, and everyone gets very defensive about that. But it's like, guys, when guys are signing and talking about their custom shoes, it's like, well, I mean, clearly this is a factor here. But you have all the stuff. Like you're kind of, Dan Lanning and Ryan Day both were kind of in the same spot this year, where it's like, boy, you've been given all the toys that you could possibly want to have. It's like you got everything you asked for, everything you needed. And Ryan Day did that with it, and Dan Lanning did that with it. And it's like, boy, I think the boy wonder thing, now you're looking back and you're going, well, he blew it against Washington in 2022. He blew it against Washington in 2023. He blew it against Washington in 2023 in the Pac-12 championship game. And then he's the number 1 team, undefeated, and they just get launched into low Earth orbit like that in their first playoff game. It's like, well, now you look back and it's like, well, now he hasn't won any playoff games, and he got stuffed in a locker in the first playoff game he had, where he, was supposed to be a competitive game, and it was like immediately, instantly, like, what did you guys work on this week? Because I can't imagine this was the game plan.
No, definitely not.
Dave K says, how big is Super Chat to have Tom and Tony do a hoedown like Jack and Ty?
I tried to show you the video. Yes. I don't know if you saw it, but yes, that was during the third quarter. Oregon, the fourth quarter, Oregon what was it? Twist and shout, or is it?
Oh no, they do shout.
Shout.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And everybody was dancing along from the Ohio State sideline, much like when Ohio State goes to Wisconsin and they do jump around.
Yeah.
When you're winning like that,
Yeah.
when you're feeling your oats, you can do that. And so I did tweet out some of that, and I did give the trigger warning to the Ohio State fans that there were both handshakes and dancing. So please, if this is going to upset you, do not watch. And I will also say, after this, the handshakes and the dancing, Ohio State still went on to win the game.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's helpful. Maybe everyone will take a little bit of a deep breath. I think we talked about this yesterday, right? We've had some long days here, but the Ryan Day press conference with Dan Lanning, and Ryan Day is frowning.
Yeah.
Like, he smiled once when he was talking about his wife, but that was it. And then Dan Lanning's happy and cheerful, and and it was like, well, if Ohio State wins, this is going to be Ryan Day was laser focused, and if Ohio State loses, Ryan Day was tight. Well, I guess Ryan Day was laser focused, and Dan Lanning was too busy thinking about smiling and not, he likes smiling. Smiling's his favorite, but so and we talked about this yesterday. Like, you end up with some sort of stupid narratives coming out of games like this, where it's like hyperbolic overreaction. I'm sure Oregon boards are like going Chernobyl right now, but this is still a good Oregon program. They still had a whole bunch of very talented recruits who are signed for Oregon now, guys who Ohio State was going after. I did think it was a little bit funny that Tennessee brought David Sanders to Ohio State and then just got lit on fire a couple weeks ago, and then Oregon brings Dorian Brew and Trey McNutt and Neem Offord, and it might be someone else, but at least those three guys, and they just watched their team just get their heads caved in for 60 minutes.
Yeah, and Ohio State's freshmen were already also there, as Bod Miller and some of the other incoming freshmen there. I saw Bod Miller walking out with a rose in his teeth already, so they're already doing that. It was also neat to see after the game the players trying to get into the crowd to their families and trying to implore security. Hey, can our families come down? Like, no, I can't do any of that. But they went and celebrated with their families. Things not going, probably not great. So we'll just on the message boards don't need the negativity right now.
Surprising.
Yeah. Bootzilla said that he's loving this because Oregon fans were talking a lot of stuff. There was a lot of in the replies to some of our videos, like silly Buckeye fans think that they have a chance at this one. But there's some condescension. But overall, when we interact with fans from the other team, they're all pretty good. Or the majority of them. So
you're saying that every fan base has a lunatic fringe?
Well, you could say that, but
in fact,
what percentage of Oregon
Tony,
fans? 15, 20?
I wouldn't want to put a number on it, Tony. That would be stupid and irresponsible.
No, let's not do that. The Oregon boards are quiet according to Sage Ohio. Well, it might be quiet. It's New Year's, plenty to celebrate, and maybe there's a resolution to log off the internet for a while.
Yeah. Do we have the Emeka thing? Is Emeka ready? Okay. So let's go real quick to the Emeka Egbuka sound. And I asked him, the first thing I asked him about was that catch, that touchdown catch, because he's juggling the ball. That was an incredible catch, and he kind of downplays it. But then
he downplays everything.
I want you to listen to the last question, because I think, there's a little bit of now they're going to be fat and happy, and they're going to be. Listen to the last question where I ask him about the offensive line. So here's Emeka Egbuka.
Walk me through that touchdown catch, because that was one where I'm watching and I thought, he's got it. Oh no, he doesn't have it. And you had that was an incredible catch. Walk me through that one. Yeah, it was just a perfect ball for my quarterback. I can't say too much more. They wrote down to a 6 opposite look, so it's a look that we practice many times in practice. And he throws a great ball every time. So all I had to do was make the play. And he had a heck of a game. He felt like he did exactly what you guys needed him to do. What does that mean to have a quarterback who you guys know you can rely on in games like that? Yeah, it's very it's a lot of relief. I think when you have that position on your team taken care of, a lot of things just naturally fall into place. And he's a fearless leader, and he kind of gets everything rolling the right way. So having him at the helm of our ship is really good for the Buckeyes. And that offensive line it felt like they were dominant all game and opened up some holes in the run game, but really protecting Will as well. to go through as many versions of the offensive line as you guys have this year, and then have a performance against that kind of a defensive line, that is that something that's a little bit surprising to you? I know you believe in your teammates, but is that still a little bit surprising that you guys were able to put together that kind of performance?
No, not at all. I think the offensive line faced more scrutiny than any position group on this entire team. 5 weeks ago, all of them are getting death threats in the DMs, and then after today's game, I'm sure everyone's going to be singing their praises. So we try not to pay attention to the media at all about what anybody has to say about our team, because we wouldn't know what we have inside of our building.
Right.
So there you go. I mean, there's just a little bit of an edge there still, and I said this down here. We're in the photo workroom, if you're wondering where we are and why I'm like, oh, we haven't provided any context to where we are. I said, at one point, I was thinking on the field, I was like, was the Michigan loss the best thing that could have happened to this Ohio State team? And then I was like, do I want to say that out loud? And I was like, well, everyone will be in a good mood. It'll be fine. I can say it out loud and it'll be fine. But, there is no chance this team is getting fat and happy at this point.
No.
They are locked in, and they just beat. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they just beat the only team that is like potentially a contender for most just pure football talent on the field. That's left in the field.
I think, and now they will play the next most talent-laden team, and they'll do it in Texas against and probably this. I think the crowd here was probably 60-40-ish Oregon, maybe a little higher for Ohio State, maybe 57-43, something like that. But in the Cotton Bowl, I do wonder if you'll see. I think you will see an uptick in travel for Ohio State fans, but. Yeah, you're going into the Lions' Den there.
Right. It's you're driving down the street for Texas.
Yeah.
And Texas, Austin is only, I think, 3 hours from Dallas. Houston's 3 hours from Dallas. There's a bunch of Texas fans there. Dallas is right where Dallas is, so there's a bunch of Texas fans there. It's like a drive. You don't even need a hotel. It's a day trip. It's like Ohio State fans going to Indianapolis, except if Indianapolis was also in Ohio. So this is going to be another game where we have the whole, look at the Ohio State fans are outnumbered, which
I think they like that.
Well, here's the thing. I haven't watched any of the broadcast, obviously, so I have no idea if that was any part of the conversation. Let me explain why that happened. Oregon fans knew they were coming to the Rose Bowl on December 7th, so they had lots of time to buy plane tickets and hotels and game tickets. Ohio State fans found out on the evening of December 21st, so you had a week. So it's not like a big mystery why there were a bunch of Oregon fans here, but Ohio State fans, I was pleasantly surprised at how many Ohio State fans there were. It was probably 60-40, something like that.
I just said that.
Did you?
1 minute ago.
Well, listen.
You would just listen.
Did I tell you what time I got up this morning, sir? You're lucky I'm forming sentences right now.
I will say, right now, the way the defense is playing, if they play like this, then it doesn't really matter who they're playing.
No.
And that was kind of the words that I was getting from some of the players. So I talked to a lot of defensive guys, because to me that was maybe the main story. Is just the domination, and the confirmation was, and it's not cocky. It's just when we're playing our game right now, the way we're playing it, it's going to be difficult to beat them. And talking to Larry Johnson about when Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau are playing like this, what chance does an offense have? And he just kind of shook his head.
Yeah, see?
Just the knowing.
Basically a football coach right there. I also shook my head.
The knowing laugh, and it's have fun. Good luck with that.
Well, what's so interesting about this is how the season turned after the Oregon game, the first Oregon game.
Yeah.
That's when everything changed. The whole defense changed. And the productivity out of the defensive line, who for years was they're almost there. Ball's out. Almost so close, so frequently. And you didn't see the production, and it was well, boy, it's so weird. And then you come back from Oregon, and they just strip it to the studs and look at everything. And they're running more of a traditional Jim Knowles kind of defense. And I was thinking, I think I might have tweeted this out. I was sort of half expecting Jim Knowles to say, I'd like to know where Nick Saban is right now after Saban called the defense antiquated after the first Oregon game.
I think he was in the stadium.
He was in the stadium, yes. I saw him earlier. If you go to one of those behind-the-scenes videos, I walk right past him and Desmond Howard and Reese Davis sitting on the set. But this is such a different Ohio State defense and such a better Ohio State defense than it was at the beginning of the season. And it's like Jim Knowles had his Happy learned how to putt. I don't think Happy ever forgot how to putt. I think Happy was maybe not allowed to putt for a while. And then when it was kind of like, okay, strip it down, try it. And we've talked to Ross about this a bunch, where he'll say, like, yeah, it's a much more Jim Knowles defense. Well, guess what? Jim Knowles is pretty good at running a Jim Knowles defense, and he has some pretty good players to do with it.
Well, let me tell you this, Tom. So I asked Larry Johnson the difference between this game and the last game, and he said that they got less complicated, and they just got back to the simpler things. And it's like, okay.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it just feels like they're just doing more stuff. They're doing like
more stuff
twisting.
They should be doing instead of more stuff they should.
Twisting, stunting, blitzing. Showing pressure and then dropping out.
There were several times where it looked like Sonny was going to blitz and he didn't. And I'm sure Dylan Gabriel thought he was going to blitz and he didn't.
There was one play, and I'm like firing off shots of this. Jack Sawyer's split out, like covering a wide receiver. Like he's got outside leverage on a wide receiver. And it was like, maybe it was Terrence Ferguson, the tight end.
Yeah, probably.
One or the other. But I'm looking, I'm like, that's new. And I think he may have like sort of shown a rush and then dropped out of it again. But it was just kind of like, I've watched every snap of Ohio State football this year. I have not seen that.
Yeah, and he almost had a pick six. He finished with 3 pass breakups in this one. Mm-hmm. And the defensive front six in the last game only had 1 pass breakup. This time they had 9 total in terms of the entire defense. But Cody Simon had 1, JT Tuimoloau had 1, Jack Sawyer had 3 on his own. And they were getting to Gabriel. They were containing him. They were tackling him. They were knocking the ball down when they couldn't get to him, and eliminating these short passes that Tez Johnson could make somebody miss and go 60 yards.
Yeah.
Terrence Ferguson has been able to do that as well.
Yeah.
And they didn't even allow that to happen.
Yeah.
And it started up front, and you can't give the defensive line and give everybody credit, Jim Knowles credit, all of the coaches. I was leaving the locker room and I stopped at CJ Barnett, who's part of the team. I'm like, as a safety, how good is Lathan Ransom? And he's like, we got the 2 best safeties in the nation. I don't think people appreciate Lathan Ransom enough, and I think they're going to miss him. But those guys are – you could say that Cody Simon and Sonny Styles have gotten so much better. Cody Simon is incredible right now. The safeties at the back end, throw Jordan Hancock in there as well. Mm-hmm. There's not a better duo. There's not a better trio in the nation.
Yeah, it feels like Caleb Downs is the Jeremiah Smith of the safeties. Lathan Ransom is the Emeka Egbuka of the safeties, where everyone like talks about the fact that he's underrated, but he's still probably a little bit underrated. And then Jordan Hancock is the Carnell Tate, where it's like, well, he's like the third guy, but he's still good, but he's the third guy.
He'd be one somewhere else.
Right, exactly, yeah. No, Lathan Ransom and Cody Simon, I mean, once again, I'm looking over at the stats. Yeah. You're not going to believe it, but Cody Simon and Lathan Ransom are the top 2 guys in tackles. 11 tackles for Cody Simon, 7 tackles for Lathan Ransom, 3 TFLs for Cody Simon. Holy Moses. 3 TFLs, a couple sacks, a sack for Lathan Ransom. I mean, that's just –
graphics there.
Here you go. Yeah, it is Jordan Hancock, 5 tackles. It's and JT Tuimoloau. How many times did you have people tweet at you something about, anytime I put out a picture of JT Tuimoloau, you had people in the comments like, oh, is that picture going to go on the side of the milk carton? Because he always disappears and you never see him. And boy, you've seen him, you've seen Jack Sawyer, you've seen Lathan Ransom, you've seen Cody Simon, you saw Sonny Styles, you saw Caleb Downs today. Tyleik Williams isn't even on this list because he didn't have like a huge statistical day, but he was in the backfield constantly.
Yeah, he was.
It felt like he spent half the day flushing 3 tackles for him, 1 TFL, but it felt like there were several times that he flushed Gabriel out into someone else. So it was like, you don't get any stats, but you were a big part of what happened.
JT Tuimoloau now on the season, Tom, 10 sacks and I believe 17 tackles for loss. So that's a Chase Young type of number as a sophomore. And now this is 14 games, which is what
About
Ohio State used to
yeah,
play.
Yeah.
So like he's turned it on. Jack Sawyer, as we know, has turned it on. Eight sacks this year now for Sawyer, and like 9 tackles for loss. So they're getting after it. Even there was a corner blitz at some point. Davison Igbinosun was almost in on a sack, but I think JT Tuimoloau got to it first. But they were attacking from all angles, and Dylan Gabriel wasn't seeing all of them because he couldn't.
No, and that's one of the really impressive things. And we should talk for a second when we're going to go to Lathan Ransom sound in a minute. You know what? I'll tell you what.
All right.
Let's go to Lathan Ransom first, and then we will turn the corner to talking about Dylan Gabriel and Oregon a little bit. But this was outside the Ohio State locker room. Got a chance to talk to him for just a few minutes, and he talked earlier in the week about the fact that they and Will Howard did too. But hey, we feel like we beat ourselves in the first game, and you hear that, and you're kind of like, that sometimes that doesn't play well, and you watch that game in the Rose Bowl, and then it's like, yeah, they might have just beaten themselves because it did the second game bore no resemblance to the first game. So here's Lathan Ransom after the game.
Yeah, get him. It feels amazing. I mean, I've been so thankful, but I'm ready to go. I'm so thankful, I thank God just for giving me another opportunity to come here. I mean, so many people helped me get here, whether from trainers, from coaches, from my family members. I'm just thankful, man. That's it.
In a nutshell, different about this defense. What felt different tonight?
We were just doing our jobs, executing. We beat ourselves the last time, and we made sure not to do that this time. That's it.
Was there anything that's
negative 26 rushing yards?
Yeah.
What does that say about the way that you guys can?
We're flying around. Coach Knowles was dialing it up. We were executing our job.
When did you get the sense that tonight was going to
When we went up big in the first half, we had a good feeling, but it's just because of the preparation and how we prepared and stuff. The coaches came out with great game plans, and we made our fixes from the last time we played.
What did you guys do last time? You said you beat yourselves in October. What did you do last time that you didn't do tonight?
Not beat ourselves.
What did you do to beat yourself in October?
Miscommunication, busted coverage, and stuff like that.
Late the 2 straight dream starts. Can this keep going?
Yeah, as long as we keep executing and doing our jobs, we can keep going.
What do you know about Texas in a nutshell?
Man, I'm just focused on this one. I know they got a lot of good players, explosive team, and we'll worry about them tomorrow.
What did you see in prep ahead of this game and based on the last time that let you guys do what? I mean, you got up 34-0 on it. You something.
We beat ourselves, so we went out there and fix our mistakes and execute on a high level. And they were dialing up on our offense. I'll tell you that.
They didn't have a gain longer than 12 yards till the last drive of the first game. How important was it to limit their explosive plays?
Yeah, I mean, we did a great job of doing that, communicating. We're mad about that last drive. I mean, we did that to ourselves too. So we're gonna go and fix those mistakes.
What's it like watching the offense do what they did?
Oh man, extremely exciting. Seeing JJ do that, Meg do that, Will run the show. Man, I love watching them play. But thank you guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Lathan.
All right, so that was the
most underrated man in America.
Yeah, that I mean, it's not untrue. I mean, there are people who are.
He's just really, really good.
Yeah.
He's solid. He doesn't make mistakes, and he hits like a linebacker and covers like a safety. And there was one where I think it was Jordan James, and I don't know if it was the hit that took him out of the game, but it happened, and you hear like 3 or 4 people in the press box like, that had to be Lathan Ransom. You don't know who it is. You just see, like, I thought it was Cody Simon because of how hard it was hit, but like you see somebody crashing down, and like Caleb Downs has his own style of tackling. Like he'll come in and he did it in this where like there's a one-on-one tackle. He's able to grab ankles and grab knees. Lathan Ransom just grabs faces and smashes them.
He did not have the best face grab of the game. That was I don't remember who the face mask was on. I think it might have been on Quinshon Judkins. Yes. But that was like, boy, the phrase "get your money's worth." That was about 47 yards worth of face mask, and they only got charged 15. That's like Black Friday pricing on face masks.
Did you see all of the flags? There are at least 3 flags thrown on
the back judge. I was looking at that from across the field. The back judge is like 10 yards away from me and like 40 yards. It was one of the more impressive flag throws I've seen, where he's like on the dark side of the moon, and he throws the flag because it was like, boy. Heads do not normally spin that way, so
no,
that's
not supposed to.
Not supposed to. So, all right. So, thank you to everyone who is hitting the like button. We appreciate that. Share this as well if you're on social media. Throw this on your Twitter feed. Say, hey, come join us. We love having a chance to talk to you guys, and we're planning on I just sent Kevin over to figure out how long we can stay, and we were planning on staying as long as we possibly can.
I got nowhere else to be other than on a bus eventually.
Other than a place where I can eat some food. We'll probably do the morning show back at the hotel. Sorry to tell you. So let's get real quickly to we was going to talk about Dillon Gabriel. I know we have a graphic about the quarterback comparison. It is that was not the game you were expecting, because Dillon Gabriel has been since basically, we have the running bit about, not since Abraham Lincoln. He really has, it feels like he's been playing college football since the days of Abraham Lincoln. He almost passed, and I'm going to forget the name of the Houston quarterback who was the all-time leader. Like he could have, if he had kept playing, ended up the all-time leading passer in NCAA history. Ended up falling just short. 29 for 41, 299, 2 touchdowns. It was like that was a gamer performance out of him. It was just that was just and no one's going to think about this as like, wow, what a great performance that was out of Dillon Gabriel. He was running for his life. Yep. They had no running game to lean on at all. Ohio State, when you can't run the ball, the opposing defensive line can just go, okay, well, see that dude, let's tackle him. And so he was fighting uphill all game long. He really had that was a hell of an effort out of Dillon Gabriel. And I just wanted to mention that because it's like, we're talking about all the Ohio State stuff. Yeah. And obviously that's the big story, but man, you have to kind of like tip your hat because that was a really impressive effort from Dillon Gabriel. Yeah, kind of going out on his shield there in the last game. It was not going well, and he kept going and had a good second half, but when Ohio State is like, feel free to take 7 minutes on this drive. Yeah. But they got after, and they were still getting after him. When I'm leaving with like 7 minutes to go to get on the elevator to come downstairs and walking through the concourse and hear sack Cody Simon. It's like another one. Yeah, right. I think that was the 8th sack at that point. And as long as Oregon wasn't going to stop playing, Ohio State wasn't going to stop playing, and they just stayed after him the entire game. I was a little surprised that they didn't put some of the backups in. There was like Jeremiah Smith was out there with 5 minutes left in the game, and I'm like, you're not throwing the ball. Everyone knows you're not throwing the ball. Like I would put him in bubble wrap and you're going to need him in Arlington in about a week and a half. Todd says, seems like there was much more rotation on the defensive line. And there was, but I feel like that's been kind of a constant. That's one of those things that has sort of changed following some of these losses in the way that they kind of did a whole thing, a whole overhaul in the defense. They recognized, hey, you've got Michigan, but then you've got Tennessee, you've got Oregon, now you got Texas, then you're going to have the, probably Georgia, Penn State, Notre Dame, whoever that is. Like there are no more freebies. And you're gonna be in a bunch of physical games. You have to rotate more. And I think that there are folks on that staff who maybe would not have chosen to do that, but it's like you got to take the big picture view, and so they are. And man, Caden Curry's played well. Kenyatta Jackson, holy smokes, Kenyatta Jackson is playing his way into some preseason awards hype for next year. If he's, when we're having yes, JT and Jack are gone, but boy, Kenyatta Jackson. And there you see Kenyatta Jackson right there. Edric Houston is out there early. Hero Canoe is out there early. Mm-hmm. Taiwan Malone was out there, and I think some point in the first half, maybe the third quarter, talking to Larry Johnson about that afterwards. He's like, we have to rotate the way that Oregon likes to play. If they had their druthers, it wears them out. Ohio State, I think Oregon said Ohio State, they could tell, got tired in the first game in the second half. And so they didn't want that to happen this time. And they were rotated constantly. There were plenty of big situations where Jack Sawyer's on the sideline because he's getting a breather, and either Mitchell Melton or Caden Curry or Kenyatta Jackson were out there. Yeah, there was that rotation was deep but effective. Yeah. David Turkaleski says, is it too early to ask about Texas and how we match up? If I just say yes, can we move on? Well, no? Okay. As soon as I saw this, I realized we've got to watch some Texas football games. We do. Yeah, I'm sitting on the field and I'm like, do we need to watch the first Texas game before we leave the hotel tomorrow? We might, but because there's some good ones, and we can just watch maybe the last 3 or last 4. We don't need to go past that. Yeah.
Because if we go with the last four, and I don't think we have enough time, frankly, we may, but it's at Texas A&M, Georgia, Clemson, Arizona State. Those are all legit games to learn from.
I think my broad thoughts on Texas, and I have not, I will probably modify my thoughts on Texas to a certain degree, but when I look at Texas, I think that defensive line is going to be a challenge. And we said that about Tennessee, and Ohio State handled it fine. And we said that about Oregon, and Ohio State handled it fine. This is probably the best of the defensive lines that you're going to face. And then if you face Notre Dame, that might be the best of the defensive lines you face. But although they just lost Riley Mills. In that
they're
game,
really
so
banged up.
They're banged up. So either way, I think the conversation with Texas starts with that defensive line. They're running the ball better now than they did earlier in the season. Although I walked in here and looked at the TV during that game today, and I looked up, and they had like the stat broadcast thing up there, and they have all the stats up there, and it's like Arizona State's completely, I tweeted this out, it was like, these numbers don't make sense. It was like Arizona State was completely dominating the game in everything except for the scoreboard, and it was just, and like Texas up 17-3, and Arizona State's outgaining them like 2-1, and is running like 3 times as many plays. It was like, this doesn't make any sense.
214 yards rushing for Arizona State, 296 yards passing for Arizona State in that game that they probably should have won. They didn't get it done. I saw there was a comment there about Will Howard being happy that he's going to play Texas because he's played against them 4 times and never beaten them. It's come very, very close to beating them, and I'm sure that's what
may
he
have
really
a slightly
wants.
better supporting cast this time.
Yeah, slightly, there was one. It was in 2023, I believe, where he played his guts out and didn't quite get it done. That was one of his better games. I'm just looking real quick.
He had 300-something yards.
26 of 41 for 327, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Didn't quite happen for him. It was a 33-30 loss. They came back in that one big time. 9 rushes, negative 23 yards. Texas got after him. Texas will be the most talented defense I think that Ohio State plays based on overall talent. But again, I'm interested to see the secondary because we're seeing Ohio State play some teams that have some good defensive lines, but then the secondaries are very questionable. And as long as Ohio State holds up on these pass rushers, then nothing else matters.
Right.
They can just throw on it, and then you have to now we got to we need to add another defender to the pass defense. And it's like, okay, now we're going to run it.
Right. And I will maybe modify my opinion on Texas to a certain degree after we get to a chance to watch them, but I think the general safe assumption is Texas probably does not have 3 corners as good as Ohio State's 3 wide receivers. So you're going to have a mismatch somewhere. And Ohio State's been very, very good about moving guys around and getting, using formation, using motion to get guys in advantageous matchups. And it feels like there probably will be an advantageous matchup for them to get somewhere.
So 316 odd yards against Kansas State, 336 the week before against Clemson, passing yards allowed. So, I mean, we will see. The way Will Howard's playing right now, what was his worst play in this game? Where was the bonehead mistake that quarterbacks make? Like, because I don't know that he had one. I asked Chip Kelly after the game, was this Will Howard's best game? He's like, I don't know. He's had some really good ones. And then he looked at me and he said, I hope not. Because they still have 2 more games to go.
Was this Will Howard's best game yet is a different question.
Right.
Was this Will Howard's best game?
And it wasn't his most accurate game, but he was also throwing the ball away. There was some really good coverage on some 3rd downs that didn't go Ohio State's way, but he made some incredible throws in this one. Pinpoint the one to Emeka. We could talk about Jeremiah Smith at some point. The throw back to Jeremiah Smith when he's rolling left. And
let's pump. I know we have a graphic about Jeremiah Smith. So let's punch that up while we're talking about that.
But again,
he was incredible. I mean, I feel like we just constantly have this conversation of like, boy, we keep saying wow, and it's like, well, certainly we must be, we must have seen the best of Jeremiah Smith. No, he's got. This was. Both those photos are from that first touchdown where he just cruised in, 7 catches, 187 yards, 10 targets, which is probably not enough, but but it wasn't. But this is now 2 straight college football playoff games where it has been non-competitive in the second half. I mean, there was once Ohio State scored the first touchdown of the second half, like after when they scored their first touchdown, it was kind of like, all right, Oregon went down the field, they scored, they're still down 3 scores, so Ohio State just needs probably a 5-minute drive, even if it just kick a field goal or something, that's probably enough. But if they score a touchdown, the game's over, because there's no way Oregon's saying Tennessee, because I feel like we just watched the same game twice, basically. There's no way Oregon's going to be able to come back because there's just not enough time. And boom, they went right down the field and scored. And then you don't need to throw to them after that. You can just kind of run the clock out, and that's what they did. Here's freshman receiving yards in a game. Jeremiah Smith, number 1 on that list, the Rose Bowl against USC. Number 2, Chris Carter, also the Rose Bowl against USC. Rose Bowl against Oregon, Rose Bowl against USC in 1984. So 15 more yards than Chris Carter, 153 for David Boston against Indiana in 1996. And then, but after that, it's just Chris Carter, Jeremiah Smith, Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is in there, and it's like, oh yeah, Garrett Wilson. He was amazing as a freshman, and he's on this list.
30 receptions.
He's on this list once.
Yeah. And
Chris Carter, NFL Hall of Famer, is on this list twice. And Jeremiah Smith, it's just, okay, well, 100 yards, 119 yards. There's 2 of those are against Oregon. That's
same
not,
year.
That's not your running up. That's not your running it up on Akron, and it's just like these poor overmatched.
That's not Western
orphans.
Michigan.
Yeah. Doing it against Western Michigan is one thing. Doing it against Oregon twice is entirely another thing.
So now Jeremiah Smith on the season, 1,224 yards receiving. Last year, Marvin Harrison Jr., 1,211 yards receiving. As a sophomore, Marvin Harrison Jr., 1,263 yards receiving. So the next game,
I think he's tied Marvin Harrison's touchdown number from last year as well, because Jeremiah has 14 now. Marvin Harrison had 14 last year. And
in 2022.
Marvin Harrison, I will remind you, went number 3 in the NFL draft, and was like the most pro-ready wide receiver and he's a freshman.
This guy would go number 1 right now, based on the quarterbacks that are out there, and that they're not great. Because and that's not just me saying that; that's from other people saying that, me talking to people, that he would be. Because again, what he's doing, and we talk about it, and I wanted to ask Chip Kelly, like, is there anything you haven't said about him that you would like to? Because what more is there to say? It's just you watch him, and I asked Brian Hartline the other day, like, when was the last time you're surprised by him? He's like, I'm always surprised. And it's like, I'm surprised every day by him. And you're like, but you shouldn't. But then you're watching it, and you are wowed by him every single time. And let's go back to spring, Tom, when there were closed practices, and we would talk to people, and there would be the one was that he takes your breath away. And then the first time we got in there to watch him, and he was lighting up Denzel Burke. He was lighting up Davis Nigbinosin. It took your breath away.
There was one where it was him going up against Denzel Burke, and Caleb Downs was back there, and he caught it. And it was like we spent the whole spring going, listen, we are not going to tell you what we think about this, because it would be like reckless to say the words that are in my brain right now about what this guy might be able to do, because he just turned 18 years old. Like, that's not fair to put that. Think about what you were like at 18. Like, I was not ready to handle that kind of spotlight. That kind of,
I spilled cereal in the car once when I was 18.
We'll get to that story later. It's not fair to put that on someone, but you can tell right now, like, he knows, everybody knows, and when we talked to him before we came down here, that was by far the most outgoing he's been
for
in
sure.
terms of an interview, and it was just kind of like, and it's like the Lathan Ransom or Will Howard saying, like, well, we beat ourselves the first time. Like, it sounds cocky, but then if you go out there and back it up, it's like, well, no, that's just factual.
Told you.
When he says, if I'm bracketed, am I covered? No. How many guys would have to be on me? I don't know. Like, I think Will Howard. The entire team. I think Will Howard said like 3 or 4. They had 3 guys on him on one, and he caught it.
Yeah.
That was one where I popped the camera over, and I'm like, oh, this is a bad decision.
Yeah.
That was like what I thought was going to be the Will Howard bad decision. It was like, nope. Jeremiah Smith's just going to go up between 3 guys and bring it down.
Just throw it where they can't get it, and he can, and he did it repeatedly. And every time the ball goes to him, you know something can happen, and it's an incredible thing when you're like, oh, and then he does it, and it's like, how did he do that? It's like, well, he's Jeremiah Smith. That's how he did it.
Yeah.
Why are you doubting him?
Yeah,
like,
right.
Who do you think you are?
Yeah, Mike Farino says Jeremiah Smith also set the Big Ten freshman receiving touchdown record today.
I don't
who
know.
would have held that.
No idea who would have held that
That's a good question. Here's the Ohio State freshman receiving touchdown record. And look at the names on this list. There is nothing but how many?
All first rounders except for Chris Carter because of the
because he went in the alternate draft, the supplemental draft. So you have a NFL Hall of Famer, and literally everyone else is a first round draft pick.
Everybody's top 12.
He's lapping the field at this point. He's and he's played. He's going to end up with more games than some of these guys. But Marvin Harrison Jr. Look at Marvin Harrison Jr. on that 3 touchdowns. Do you remember when Marvin Harrison Jr. got those 3 touchdowns?
It was in the Rose Bowl in 2022, the 2022 Rose Bowl, that was his coming out party.
Mm-hmm.
This entire season has been a party for Jeremiah Smith. And again, none of them are surprise parties, but you're always amazed at what you see. It's like, he's incredible.
Yeah, he does something. I think it was the 3 guys on him, and he caught it. And it was just like, what? Yeah. How?
I don't know if it was that one. There was another one where I was like, what the hell? Like, what is this? What are we watching here?
Yeah, I constantly think, well, we understand who he is now. We understand what he is now. We're not going to be surprised anymore. And then it's just like, oh, nope, here's another thing. And very clearly, everyone knows he's the guy. He's the guy they're going to. Very clearly, the game plan in the first 2 games has been throw it to him deep early on. And 2 pretty good secondaries, Tennessee and Oregon, have just been like, well, nothing we can do about that.
What do you want us to do about it? And you go into this game thinking, well, we can't let Jeremiah Smith beat us. And it's like, well, we didn't let him. He just did it anyway.
Yeah.
Like, there's no letting him do it. He's just doing it.
Yeah. So there's conversation about the crowd breakdown, and we talked about this earlier. I know you talked about this earlier.
Yes.
But yeah, 60-40 is about right. It was more Oregon than Ohio State, but we talked about this a little earlier. I was like pretty surprised at how many Ohio State fans there were. There was up at the parade, it was probably pretty close to 50-50.
Yeah.
And then coming down, I thought it was pretty close to 50-50. And then, more Oregon fans certainly, but as we said, Oregon had a 2-week head start on Ohio State in terms of being able to book flights, buy tickets, all that kind of stuff. Doug Shepard says, Jeremiah Smith, the most complete receiver I've ever watched, and I've been watching football for 50-plus years.
Yeah. Who are you going to put over him right now? I mean, yes.
Randy Moss.
Well, in terms of
Jerry Rice.
I'm just thinking of Ohio State, but yes, no.
He didn't say Ohio State football. He said football.
At this point. Yeah. At this point, like, you can't compare him to anybody.
No.
There's nobody you can compare him to.
No, because Marvin Harrison talked last year about Carnell Tate being ahead of where Marvin Harrison was at that same point in his career.
And it's
there's not even a conversation.
Here's the thing: we were trying to be cautious in how we talked about him before the season, and eventually we're like, I think you before me. Oh, he's starting this year, and it's like, well, come on, it's a freshman.
Yeah,
don't say crazy things. And then I think after one of those spring practices, I'm like, he's getting 1,000 yards this year. At this point, what is there to be cautious about in terms of talking about what he is, what he could be? Because if you talk about what he could be, just go ahead and say that's what he is, because he's going to get there.
Yeah.
He is determined to get there. This is what he wants to do. This is all he wants to do. He said, I want to play football for the rest of my life. And nobody's been able to contain that yet. Nobody's been able to stop that yet. So if he is the trajectory that he is on, it gets a little ridiculous. And so then you can only do so much. Like, there's no such thing as a superhuman. But if there were,
I'm not saying
like if Superman did, like Superman was not allowed, Clark Kent was not allowed to play football.
Yeah.
Because this is what would have happened.
Yeah. And the other thing I remember from the spring was we were trying to be so cautious about him and not get out over our skis at all. And then I think it was during the Ohio High School Coaches Clinic. We were in there and watched him pull in a one-handed ball like over 2 defensive backs or something. And it was like we weren't allowed to shoot video.
Yeah.
So we're watching and we're like, well, I don't know how we're going to talk about this without gassing him up even more. And then one of the coaches who was there put the video out on Twitter so everyone saw it. And it was like, okay, good. Well, now everyone's in on the secret.
Again, I don't know how much more we can say about him. We'll just talk about him again the next game about what else he did. But this was a career high for him. And would you be shocked to see another career high before the season is out? Because he was headed for 200, no doubt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If this was a game like the 2022 Rose Bowl,
correct,
where the defense was allowed 42 points or whatever it was, and he had to play for 4 quarters, are you telling me he couldn't have put up that? Because Jackson Smith-Njigba was 15 receptions for 347 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I mean, I don't know what his numbers in the first half were, but it was probably.
There was a point where I'm sitting next to Andy Anders and Dan Hope of 11 Warriors, and I'm like, I don't want to tell you guys how to do your job, but maybe if somebody could find out where exactly was Jackson Smith-Njigba at this point of the 2022 Rose Bowl, because at this point in the first quarter or so, he had like 5 for 132 or something.
Yeah.
4 for 132 or something. It's like I'm saying, I don't want to tell you how to do your job, but I would also like to know the stat, and I know that they would dig it up.
Yeah. And you tweet it out, and I'll give you credit.
And so it came back. It was like Jackson Smith-Njigba had like 5 for 160 or something in the first half, but at that same point, and it's like that was an incredible game. The reason that he had that game was because the Ohio State defense had the game that they did, which was not great. There was not enough opportunity. There was it wasn't needed in this one for Jeremiah Smith to have that, but I don't think there's any doubt they could have, unless they put 3 guys on him. And then, like you said, then it just requires a good throw from Will Howard.
Right. Well, then it's like, well, you've got to put it in the one spot, but it doesn't matter. I guess we're going to hit some photos now because we have one. This is one of them, and this was a great Will Howard throw. This was, the coverage wasn't incredible, but this was not a huge play, but it was just like the touch on the second touchdown against Tennessee for Jeremiah Smith, where he just kind of like puts his arms up and the ball just drops in there. And this was like a play that I think was probably pretty forgettable for people. Like it was just like, was this the 40-yard touchdown? No, this was like a, first down, whatever. But it was just such a well-thrown ball. Now this is the end of the Emeka Egbuka sequence. If we can go back, there is the Emeka Egbuka juggling touchdown catch was, again, like, we've spent all this time talking about Jeremiah Smith. Emeka Egbuka, 5 catches, 72 yards, touchdown, and 42-yard touchdown, 5 catches on 6 targets. It's just
no big whoop.
And he's just, his entire career has just been like, well, this is the first shot from that sequence, and he's, it's pretty good coverage there. There's the second shot. Like, he kind of gets it with his hand. It kind of bops up in the air a little bit, and then he has to bring it back in. And and look, his if you see, his left arm's being held there. He's got to do this with one hand, and boom, just brings it in, and then boom, touchdown. It just looks so effortless. That was one where I went, I'm watching this and I'm like, oh, I knew I could tell where the ball was going. I got there, got the camera there. I had it focused properly. I'm like, this is gonna be a great shot. And then he tries to catch it with one hand. I'm like, oh, that's too bad. It's gonna be an almost, too bad. And then nope, caught it, touchdown.
This was another one, kind of like the touchdown to him the last time that was against Tennessee. That was just a dime right down the seam.
Yep. Here's this is Jeremiah Smith's first touchdown. And again, look at how far back everyone is. It's just, who's number 0? I'm forgetting now who number 0 is. Jabbar Muhammad is number 5, I believe.
Is it Johnson?
Yeah, it might be Johnson. But it just you look at the body language back there, and it's just like, well, crap. They figured out that he's good.
Remember when Ty Hamilton said we knew they didn't want to play? I think the Oregon defense probably got to a point where they didn't want to play either. And you could see the execution of Ohio State. It didn't really matter whether Oregon wanted to play or not.
Yeah, and that's Jeremiah Smith after that first touchdown, letting the Oregon crowd know that your presence is not required here. And this is the second game in a row where there's been lots of conversation about, there's so many fans for the opposing team. How many times did it get loud?
Never.
I mean, it was loud at the start, and it was loud when they scored it was loud when they scored the first touchdown in the second half, and it was like, okay, it's 34-15 now. Like, maybe maybe they have a chance here. And then you didn't hear him again. Yeah, and this is the long Travion Henderson touchdown run. That was the like bolt of lightning moment for me. It was going back to the 2014 Big Ten championship game. There was a long run, I think right before halftime. It wasn't like Joey Bosa had the scoop and score fumble on the Melvin Gordon fumble, and that made it 38-0. So it was probably the score that made it 31-0 in that Big Ten championship game. But it was the same thing. It was just like, they're off to a good start, but can they sustain? Oh, there he goes, just gone. And it was just, that was the Henderson touchdown was the moment where it was like, they might score 60. And if they had really wanted to, they probably could have. This is the second game in a row. We've talked about overage before.
Yep.
This is the second game in a row where they came with a 60-minute game plan and then a whole bunch of overtime game plan, and they burned like half of it, maybe. They have a whole bunch of stuff that they have not had to burn. And
both sides of the ball.
Both sides of the ball. And Texas just had to play a 4-quarter plus game. And, they were probably the closest of the first round games against Clemson. Here's Will Howard running the ball. And he wasn't super effective on the ground, but he did what they needed him to do. Like it wasn't flashy. It was just kind of, okay, you needed it a couple times. You show it, you make them respect it. And that was it. And that's all they needed there. But, Texas has had some close-ish games and had to fight and had to burn a lot more of their stuff than Ohio State.
Basically, the entire second half of the season, they've had to do everything they can. The 3-point win at Vandy, 10-point win at Arkansas, the Texas A&M game, and then losing to Georgia, playing in playoffs against Clemson, where Clemson came back into that game, and so they had to fight for their lives, and of course the Arizona State one. Super chat from Erwin Lichtenberg. On to Arlington, where we last won a national championship. He was there. Safe travels, gents. OH. Yes, looking forward to getting there. And it's been a minute since we've been there. Oh no, it actually hasn't. But I suspect this game will go better than that one. Whether or not Ohio State wins, the game itself will be better than the last time Ohio State was in the Cotton Bowl.
Dave K says, super chat, Herbie saying Carmen, Ohio on the broadcast, kind of like a lunatic, trying to make amends, I guess. Enjoyed that in the rewatch. Also, Tom wears green, SMH hater. Listen, this is the Rose Bowl photo vests. They make you wear it. And this is also, you never see me in the photo vest on the postgame show because normally you have to turn them in. Because it's printed as college football playoff quarterfinal in the Rose Bowl presented by, they're not going to reuse this. So therefore they said, no, just keep it. Because normally you turn them in. So I did not have.
So you got something? I got a hat.
Oh, look at
Rose
that.
Bowl hat.
That's not a Rutgers sponsor. You're not allowed to take a hat. That's not a Rutgers sponsor. Please.
I didn't take it. It was
given to. Yeah. Okay. That's fine.
Purloined. Stolen.
Yeah. I know what it means. Thank you. I'm the smart one. We've talked about this.
Smart adjacent.
I'm just trying to think through what else we haven't talked about. I know we've gotten all of our sound bites. We got to our photos. I think we've gotten through all of our graphics. I guess we can talk.
Do we have any questions?
Yeah. Do we have? Yeah. Okay. Let's hit. Yeah. Let's hit some questions. William McMillan says these last two games have been like a ritual cleansing. The coaches and players have seen and done things that are proof of what can be. From now to the end of the next games, make it so. Next two games, make it so.
It's best to be playing your best at the end of the season. And November is for contenders. What is December? What is January now? Nothing rhymes with January.
Toyotathon?
No. TND 2468 from an Oregon fan. Congrats on the win. Much respect. Really, I don't know, as an Oregon fan, this is one you just have to accept. Like, it was a great season, but this was an overwhelming thing. Sometimes that happens.
Well, and this is we've heard lots of people talking this week about, boy, this is sort of a budding rivalry. Guess what? Remember when Ohio State lost to Clemson and how that was guess what? Oregon's going to have Ohio State circled on the calendar next year. And, with the way they recruit against each other and all that, I mean, this is going to be Oregon. Oregon has, I'm going to say this as respectfully as I can, some real main character energy, like everything from like bringing the big duck to float on the river in Indianapolis to like the whole series of videos of the duck mascot going to every Big Ten stadium and, they win the Big Ten championship in their first year, and it's all about me, and they got a reminder that there was a landlord here before you moved in, and
it's tough to beat a team 2 times in a season, as everybody says.
Well, but guess what? This is not going to be the last time these two teams play 2 games in a season. They may. Oregon's not on the regular season schedule for Ohio State next year, I don't think. Are they?
They still may play them twice next year.
Well, they very well might play them twice. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is now certainly a rivalry, and it will be interesting to see if they are as driven by Ohio State, even though they won the Big Ten championship. Which do you think they'd rather have at this point, a win tonight or a Big Ten champion?
Well, is that a serious question?
No, it's not. That's the point.
All right, what do we got next? We already did that. Pablo says Ohio State shut it down when they went up 34-0 against the Ducks, just like when they were up 42-10 against the Vols. And
why not?
Yeah, well, that's smart. Like, I'm sure. Like I was thinking, I'm sure Ryan Day would absolutely love to just rub Dan Lanning's nose in it and put up 50 or put up 60. But that's not the ultimate goal. No. And that's not, I don't think that was out of sportsmanship as much as there are 2 more games. Like Oregon can torch all their stuff in this game because they don't have to play another one.
Ohio State has taken an approach all season long of needing to play 15, 16 games or whatever it takes, and doing so with a slower pace, with as much rotation as they can manage in games when they feel comfortable. So there's no reason for them to try to do more in this game than they need to, because it's not just once this game is considered done, it's no longer about this game. It's about the next game and the game after that.
Well, it becomes, we always talk about this the week before the Michigan game. At what point is it Michigan week? And it's like, well, they're up by 3 touchdowns on Rutgers or Maryland or whoever at the end of the third quarter, like it's officially Michigan week. It felt like it was Cotton Bowl week. Certainly when Ohio State scored the first touchdown in the second half, and it was like that was 41-15. It was just like they needed to score once in the second half to put a nail in the coffin. So that felt like that was kind of the moment there. Wingman Ted, boy, if I say this out loud, Jordan Kapler is going to swing back to hating me this year. Okay. So I don't know that I want to be the one that puts this out into the universe. So can we get Kevin to read this? Or
no. Wingman Ted. Can we talk about how Davison Igbinosun has gone 2 games in a row without being flagged for a defensive pass interference, and really losing Evan Stewart maybe played into that, because he's a pretty good guy, but also their inside guy, Tez Johnson, is their best receiver, and he's not necessarily always going to be matched up outside. Although they did move him around, they're going to try to move him around. They just couldn't get anything done with him, and Dylan Gabriel wasn't able to. For one, he didn't have the time, and then he was being pressured, and so the accuracy left right away. And so when in the first game, they gave him time. They're like, okay, we'll just keep everything in front of us unless they get behind us. But they were a lot more cautious the last time. Now it's talking to the players, talking to the coaches, caution to the wind type of thing, and just go attack, play their ball, and whatever happens. And they're pretty confident as long as they're playing their ball, everything that happens is going to be good.
All right, and speaking of things happening that were good, Wingman Ted says scripted play to G. Scott was amazing and definitely not one I saw coming. Now, that was the first play of the game, and I knew they threw the ball to G. Scott, but I didn't know anything other than they threw the ball to G. Scott and he ran for quite a while.
Yeah, I think he lined up in the backfield, and Quinshon Judkins had split out wide, and they did some motion, and there was a pump fake, and it was a pump and go, maybe a fake screen to G, and then when the defense relaxed, and then he just kept going, and they hit him for 30 yards or so.
All right, so Doug Shepard says Jack Sawyer's playing angry. Cody Simon and Lathan Ransom were all laying wood, and that was I said this earlier, that was a hidden football game. And you see that when you get to these games, like no one is trying to like atomize a Rutgers player. Like there's not any,
right.
This is a game where there's a little bit of animosity, a little bit of bad blood, a little bit like the whole thing that set up for Ohio State football team that came in with something to prove, and especially an Ohio State football defense that came in with something to prove. Because Jim Knowles got asked last week, yeah, sure, you fixed it, you think, and the result's been much better, but are you sure you fixed it? Do you know that you fixed it? Because you haven't played a team this good yet. Well, guess what? I think it's fixed, and I think they proved the point they were trying to prove.
Right, but then you'll have to prove it again in the next game and in the next game, because there was nobody satisfied in the locker room, nobody satisfied in the post-game interviews.
All right. Darth Ducky says, yeah, you guys are lights out. Play like that. No one else can compete with you. Congrats. I'm going to go drink some more. I have not looked at the betting odds. I'm going to guess
5.5 is what.
No. I don't mean the point spread. I mean the betting odds for the national championship. Plus 115 for Ohio State. So Ohio State's close to even money as the national. Yeah, and that's, you know what? That's about what I would expect right now. Yeah. And that will probably, maybe that'll shift a little depending on who wins the Notre Dame Georgia game, but Georgia's missing its quarterback. Notre Dame's banged up in a bunch of spots, and Penn State's on the other side of the bracket. And Penn State has looked good, but Penn State hasn't played anybody. In the playoff. So, you look at the teams. Even if you just set aside, hey, Ohio State has just atomized two teams in the playoff. You look at the rosters. You look at no one is close to as complete as Ohio State, and it was. I came into this game thinking, yeah, here we go. Ohio State plus 115, Texas plus 300, Penn State plus 475, and then Georgia and Notre Dame plus 700. Because you got to remember, they got to win another game.
Right, yeah.
That skews those numbers a little bit. Those will come down. The winner of that, the number's going to come down substantially. But because they both have another game ahead of them, so there's, it's even if it's 50-50, you're losing a bunch of those odds. So. I don't know that there's anyone in this field now. Oregon was the one that you looked at and you went, boy, complete team, good offense, defense is good enough, incredible talent, good, really good in the trenches. And then that happened. And so, yeah, it's...
When Ohio State plays like this, they're going to beat everybody. Now, can Texas keep them from playing like this?
Right, yeah.
Yes, but can you keep them from playing like this for enough? And,
right.
And I don't know that anybody nobody would expect them. Ohio State's the betting favorite right now, and they'll continue to be that as long as they're in this. Texas will be able to do some things, but I don't think anybody expects the Ohio State offense to be stopped all game long, or the defense to be giving up. What is the most that you would expect? Like 24, 27? And if you're not giving up more than 30,
who's scoring 27 on this defense?
I don't know, but you can have some flukes, you can have some field position.
You could turn the ball over,
right? Yeah. But if you're not giving up 30 points, is Ohio State being held under 30 right now?
I'd like to look into some of the defenses a little more,
Texas.
But let's watch some Texas.
Not right now.
Not right now. No, we have to get on a media shuttle. But let's let people know what we're about to have a smooth transition here. Back, we're going to hand it back off to Mark, and he'll, as long as you guys are interested and want to keep watching and want to keep talking and want to keep super chatting, we got nowhere to be.
Yeah,
well, that's not true. We have to be back we have to get on the media shuttle so we don't live.
It's a long walk.
I love coming to the Rose Bowl. I don't want to live at the Rose Bowl. So
couldn't afford it anyway.
We're going to have to. True. So we're going to hand it off to Mark, but then when we go back to the hotel, listen, if you guys are still watching, we can pop back on when we get back to the hotel, which, I'm guessing is probably I don't know, 45 minutes, something like that, an
Yeah,
hour. I mean,
well.
it's gonna be. It depends on how long when the shuttle comes and how long it takes.
The
for
police
shuttle.
escort only took us 25 minutes. The non-police escort,
Well,
the next
I
one
don't-
took about an hour and 20. Now,
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be that bad
Yeah,
because
no, yeah,
it is the evening time.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the beginning of the game. The photo that you got up there. So
all right,
All
I
right.
guess we will wrap it up.
Yeah.
As we're handing it off to Mark, go ahead and hit the thumbs up. We would appreciate that. I hope you had a nice break there, Mark. You had some coffee, maybe a little donut or something.
I had some dinner, yes.
Take it away, Mark.